Welcome all you horror scumbags, and thank you for tuning in to Scumbag TV, your place for all things cult horror and just plain weird. If you're into gaming, then you're in luck, because we have Ryan Cadaver from the Casket Creatures, and you can join him in Cadaver's Crypt, where he'll explore some of the craziest horror games from the past and the present. If you like it schlocky, and I know you guys like it extra schlocky, then we have Nicole Gould from the Caught Dead Watching Podcast, and if you haven't heard of the Caught Dead Watching Podcast, you need to get on it, because it's an amazing podcast. And she's going to explore some films that are so bad they're good, and films that are so bad that they should be burned in her segment, Schlock Treatment. We also have the other half of Caught Dead Watching Podcast, the son of celluloid himself, Nathan Hamilton. You can check out the best that independent horror has to offer. The son of celluloid presents the Declaration of Independence. He'll also be offering some food for thought with his segment, Picking the Bones. I, of course, am Devlin. I'll be your host in this cozy caustic abyss that I call the film Inferno. I'll be kicking things off by checking out some of my favorite Blu-ray releases from the past month. I started it off with a Lovecraft double whammy from Vestron Video Collector Series. First up is Beyond Re-Animator, the third and final installment of the Re-Animator franchise. Brian Usna, who was the producer on the first film, sits in the director's seat for this one, and Jeffrey Combs reprises his role as the Mad Dr. Herbert West. He's in prison following the events of the last two films, but hasn't given up his quest to conquer death. Chaos ensues as his reanimation serum is unleashed in the prison. It's my least favorite of the three films, but it's still quite an enjoyable watch and maintains the spirit of its predecessors. Director of the original Re-Animator, Stuart Gordon, offers up the second Lovecraft-themed film, Dagon. Now, Dagon is probably the most faithful Lovecraft film I've ever seen, and Stuart Gordon has had the most success with adapting Lovecraft's tales to the screen. In this one, a group of people are shipwrecked near a remote fishing village where all of its inhabitants are gradually turning into sea creatures. This is all due to their worship of an ancient sea god called Dagon. A movie about fish people is a tough sell at the studio, but I'm glad they pulled it off, as this is one of my favorite Lovecraft films ever made. It has some pretty awful CGI effects, but counters with some gruesome practical effects, including a graphic face removal. Both releases come with a decent amount of extras, including interviews with the directors, actors, and even a Lovecraft historian. Vestron video releases are a little bit pricey for what you get, but, if you're a completist, you're going to want the whole run. The next movie on the list comes from Unearthed Films, who are known for releasing some of the sickest and most disturbing films out there. This film is no different. Director Poison Rouge adds another chapter to the American guinea pig saga with her film Sacrifice. It only runs about an hour long, and that's about as long as it needs to. There's so much punishment packed into that hour that there's nowhere else for it to go. It's basically just observing a very troubled man in his bathroom as he gradually mutilates and destroys his entire body. The violence in the movie is incredibly cringe-inducing as he rips up fingernails and even attacks his own genitals in one of the more shocking scenes in the film. Scumbag TV's own son of celluloid, Nathan Hamilton, is featured on the commentary track along with Brad Slayton. There's also a behind-the-scenes look at the effects as well as cast and crew interviews. Now from Scorpion releasing, we have a notorious Giallo film from 1979. It's available for the first time on disc in the US, and it was released in a limited quantity that is already sold out. However, Scorpion has announced that due to popular demand that they will be issuing one more batch of these that will be available at RoninFlix.com. Giallo In Venice has been hyped up big time, and I'd say it half-ass delivers. There are scenes of explicit sex, including voyeurism and exhibitionism. There's also some shocking scenes of brutal, graphic violence, including a victim's lady parts being mangled. It seems to have built its reputation on these things, though, and without those ingredients, it would be a lackluster film. I'd say for a fan of Giallo films or extreme horror, it might be worth a purchase, but it's definitely not for everyone. There isn't much in the way of extras aside from a commentary track by Giallo historian Troy Howarth. The release does come with reversible artwork, though, as well as a slipcover and a poster with badass new art by Devin Whitehead from Cavity Colors. The last three releases come from Shout Factory. The IFC midnight release of Adam McDonald's Pyewacket caught my eye due to it being from the producers of The Witch. The Witch is one of my favorite modern horror films, so of course I must give anything related a chance. Nicole Munoz stars as a teenage girl who becomes interested in the black arts following the death of her father. She has a strained relationship with her mother, who is played by Laurie Holden, who many will recognize as Andrea from The Walking Dead. The girl ends up casting a death curse on her mother after a fight and releases an entity known as Pyewacket. The film creates a good bit of tension, has an ending that may surprise a few, but I totally saw it going in that direction. It's slim on extras, but only a making of featurette, but the price is lower compared to the other Shout releases. So it might be worth picking up if you want something, new and obscure. Next from Scream Factory, we have the super campy, ultra cheesy, god-awful, but somehow enjoyable as hell Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Now, Scream Factory had released the original Return of the Living Dead a while back, and since then there's been a huge demand for Part 2 to get it released. There were even bootleg versions floating around because there seemed to be no hope of this ever making it to Blu-ray. All of a sudden, Scream Factory drops it, and now we can all enjoy a nice, clean, and restored version of this corny-ass movie. I saw this movie so many times when I was younger, and I could never decide whether I liked it or I hated it. I generally prefer more serious zombie flicks, and the original Return of the Living Dead really walked the line between horror and comedy. The sequel decided to go balls deep with the comedy, and is basically a more comedic remake of the original film, much like Evil Dead 2 was to Evil Dead. If you accept it for what it is, you can have a good time with it, and you can kill a lot of time with all the extras packed on this disc. There are hours of interviews and featurettes, new and archives, that explore how this weirdness came about. The most interesting extras to me were about the special effects and how they were developed for the film. Not a great movie, but a fun movie, and definitely worth picking up. And finally, from the Shout Select line, we have Wild at Heart. Made in 1990 by one of my favorite directors of all time, David Lynch, and starring Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern. It's a crazy couple in love going on a road trip type film, much like True Romance and Natural Born Killers. David Lynch often has an abstract style that doesn't appeal as much to mainstream audiences, but Wild at Heart is probably one of his most accessible films. Cage and Dern play the young lovers, Sailor and Lula, who are on the run from Lula's mother, who's played by Dern's real-life mother, Diane Ladd. They run across all sorts of obstacles along the way, including the standout of the film, Willem Dafoe, as the sinister Bobby Peru. Extras include an interview with novelist Barry Gifford, a making-of documentary, and cast and crew interviews. There's also an hour's worth of extended and deleted scenes that include some surprise bonus nudity from Laura Dern. I was beginning to wonder if Wild at Heart would ever see a proper US release, but Shout Factory came through again. Now I'm just waiting for someone to upgrade Lost Highway to Blu-ray. That's a wrap for this episode of Devlin's Film Inferno, but make sure you hit that subscribe button so you know when new content drops here on Scumbag TV. Keep a lookout for Cadaver's Crypt, Schlock Treatment, Declaration of Independence, and Picking the Bones. And I'll see you guys next time.